Today I want to share with you tips on how you could improve your video production and editing skills. I imagine that this will be a series, and in each episode I will aim to share about 3 tips and my experience in working with them. I should mention that I am a writer and I do YouTube for fun. My channel is quickly approaching 10,000 subscribers, so I'm very excited about that. And I have been doing this work for a number of years, about 5 years consistently. And I turned to podcasting and I want to share my experiences with you. Now, I do vlogs, I do different type challenges at times, and I do what I like to think about as documentary type style filming of vlogs. I work primarily with farmers who live off-grid in Trinidad and Tobago. And one of the things that I should mention is that there isn't a script that we follow. I follow their day-to-day life. So in real time, there are a number of decisions that I have to be making along the lines of what shots to get, how to film it, different angles, when to choose to shoot slow motion. And then when I'm editing the video, how do I structure my files? So I'm hoping that this series over a period of time will cover all the different strategies that I have learned. But I want to keep it short and sweet, and in each of the episodes, I'll share about 3 tips. So let's dive into the first one. When you are recording your videos, one of the first things you should when I go on a site and I know this is my filming space, before I get into the storytelling aspect, which I always view as the most important aspect of the video, I will try to get my establishing shots. And that's one of the first things that I do. And I would use that opportunity to get any slow motion type work that I want to get. Maybe shots of the landscape, close-up shots of the person talking. I didn't come up with this. This is something that I remember seeing on a channel called Mark Bone. And Mark Bone is into documentary style type. I'll put a link in the show note to his channel. But one of the things that he mentioned is that when he goes to a spot to do the recording, before he starts the interviewing process, for example, he would say, let me get the establishing shots. And it gives the person an opportunity, what we will typically call the B-roll as the content creator. And it gives the person the opportunity to maybe see you at work and they become comfortable with you. So that is one of the tips that I have held on to in my YouTube journey since I heard it about a year and a half ago. So usually when I go to a space, if I'm filming at the river or a farm, I will get some B-roll shots first. I really think it gives me the opportunity to build up some sort of relationship or interaction with the person that I hope to interview or have the storytelling around. So you get your different type of shots, and that could include your establishing shots, your medium shots, your close-ups of the landscape and the people that you're working with. From that process, I will then do the interview or follow the daily activity that the person may be working on. And what I am mindful of is that as I am recording, I am paying attention to the little details that they mentioned. So say, for example, sticking with the being on a farm, following the farmer on his journey, there may be particular aspects that the farmer mentioned that I did not initially record. So say, for example, the farmer talked about a particular plant or a particular type of product that they use. When the day's activity has wrapped up, whether it's an hour or 2, I would then use that opportunity to go and get more B-roll that is aligned with the conversation that the interviewee was having. There may be little traits that the person, things that stood out in your interaction with them. And sometimes I might even go the distance to ask the person, is it okay if we get this particular shot? And it may involve some role playing so that you could get the farmer at work doing their thing and you get the B-roll. So that is how I approach the filming of my day-to-day activities. I get to the site, I capture my B-roll, I get the storyline, and then I capture more B-roll that pertains to the conversations that came up. When I'm getting the B-roll at the beginning and the end of the segments, what I would do is I would use that opportunity to switch to getting my slow motion. So if I'm filming on my camera tend to tape my B-roll at 60 frames per second. That's at the beginning and the end. And then when I switch to the storytelling mode, I would go to 30 frames per second. At one time, I used to tape at 24 frames per second. I jumped to 30 frames per second. I can't, there are subtle differences that I would notice in terms of the frame rate, but I'm comfortable working at 30 frames per second now. So that addresses the frame rates that I'm taping at. I want to talk about the equipment, but maybe I'll deal with investing in equipment in a subsequent episode. I think I want to quickly cover here how I arrange my projects once I've come home and I've copied all the footage that I have, whether it is from my drone, from the iPhone that I use to get a lot of the B-roll today, and I use a Canon M50 to tape my storyline. So at times I'll be switching between 30 and 60 frames on the M50, but I tend to use the iPhone for the B-roll now. When I get home, every one of my projects, every time I venture out and I tape a vlog, short story, whatever the case might be, each one of those items, every activity, everything that will result in a video becomes a project file. So I have a folder called video editing, and inside of that video editing folder, I would have, if today is the 21st of March 2023, I would create a folder with that name. And inside of that project folder, I have all the folders that correspond to the different devices that I have. So for example, I have a folder called M50, I have one iPhone 13, I have Mini 2, which is the drone. Every one of these folders will receive the image files or the videos, the photographs that I have taken. So I have videos for my different cameras, for my drone. I also have, and this is crucial for my process, I also have a projects folder. And inside of that projects, the film editor, the video editor that I use is called Premiere Pro. Inside of my projects folder, I have a folder called PP, which is for Premiere Pro. I have one called AE for After Effects projects. I have one called AA because I use Audition. So if I have any sort of narration that comes in there, I will store all my project files. I also have a folder called Music with my different cameras so that any music that I download, I would place it inside of there for that particular project. Long ago, I used to have an external resources folder and I would store all my music there, but I realized like if I copy and delete music eventually, you would lose it and you never know when you need to return to particular projects. And it helps, whatever structure you choose to use, it helps if you have a convention that you work with in terms of having project folders. So I strongly advise you coming up with a strategy that works for you. I'm telling you what I use and it benefits me because every project that I approach, it uses that structure. I could work easily. I could find things easily. So to quickly recap what each project would have, it would have a folder that corresponds to each one of my devices. It would have a projects folder, which is where I would store my files for like my Premiere Pro and my After Effects. It also has a music folder. And to keep things in terms of if you're using copyright-free music that you download, I strongly recommend having a text file called Notes. And inside of Notes, you could store links to the different music that you have downloaded. Because sometimes if you're posting on YouTube, you would find that a copyright claim comes up and you're kind of struggling to remember where this music folder came from. So as soon as you download a song, it helps if you store the URL where you found it. I'll talk about music in another episode in terms of where I've used copyright-free music from and with the least amount of problems. So that we've spoken so far about how I approach the video production from the taping on site. We've also covered the folder structure that I use. I have videos like this on my YouTube channel, so I strongly recommend that if you're interested in getting the visual aspects of it. In the show notes, I'll put a link to Lyndon Baptiste, which is my YouTube channel, and I cover details like this. The last point that I'll leave you with is to shoot with editing in mind. And that is something that I have come to appreciate even more. Long ago, when I first started, I would tape these long clips, sometimes 25 minutes long of this constant taping. And then I would have to go through that file and chop it up and find the relevant parts. Something that works well for me now is that I will just tape the particular B-roll segment that I have. I will tape the particular A-roll or the main storyline segment that I have, and that works fine for me. If something just needs to be 10 seconds long, I make it 10 seconds long. So tape with editing in mind, because as you edit more videos, you will get a sense of what is wasted footage for you. So save on your memory cards and whatnot. You could definitely have an approach as you begin to figure out your style a little bit more. Your style will determine how you tape. Oh, something I should have mentioned when I was talking about folder structure a little bit earlier. Inside, for each device that I have, let's work with the Canon M50. Remember, I would have been taping A-roll, which is my storytelling, and then B-roll, which is the supplementary type footage that I want to have that goes along with my video. So in each one of those folders, like for the Canon M50, I have a folder called A-roll and I have a folder called B-roll. And I will take the extra time to separate my storytelling aspects of my video files that I have from the B-roll. And to take it even a step further, because I'm using Premiere Pro, I strongly recommend using a film editor, a video editor that has labels. Labels, L-A-B-E-L. So that when you have these labels, you could color code. So to use my scenario, all my storytelling or A-roll clips, I color code them like a rose color. And my B-roll from my Canon M50, I put it in a sort of Caribbean green. So when I drop it onto the timeline and I'm overlaying different elements, I have a clear indication of what this particular film segment represents. For any footage that is B-roll or slow motion footage from the iPhone, I color code that in purple. My music is always blue. My sound effects are always yellow. So I strongly recommend using a video editor that has labels and you could color code a different type of footage. Again, the good news is it is a little bit painstaking at first, but when you develop a rhythm for it, it is a lot easier to work in harmony across multiple projects. And please, folks, I strongly recommend investing in hard drives. If you're editing on your computer, you get a 4 terabyte hard drive and you back up your footage that you have, the projects that you are especially proud of. You make, or all of them, you should be proud of all of your projects. Store your files. You never know when you want to recall a particular project that you worked on, and it is worth the investment. There's some part of me that held on to the footage and say, you know what, let me buy a hard drive, let me store this footage, and today there's even additional content I'm able to create because I've held on to those project files. It's easy to work with those project files because I have access to color-coded material in my video editors. My music is in one folder. I have notes as to where my copyright material is stored. So I hope you enjoyed these tips, and in the next episode, I will be talking to a content creator named Fix or Fling. So remember to tune into it, and thanks very much for your support. If you haven't as yet, I'd really appreciate if you could subscribe or follow in your podcast player of choice. And if you have a moment or two to rate the show on Spotify, I'd really appreciate it. See you in the next episode.